Hello and welcome back to another episode of For Azeroth. I am, of course, one of your hosts, the True Villain Manny, or just Manny, and I am joined, coming from, where are we going to say this time, the heart of Texas. It is Lex Rance. How y'all doing?
We're doing great. I was thinking Texas. I was gonna make a literally popped into my head, and then you said heart of Texas. So we're connected.
There you go.
I'm doing great, Manny. I started a Lemix character today because my guild is doing things tomorrow, and I want to see if I can get high enough that they can carry me through. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. It is more fun than I thought it was going to be. I'm gonna be honest.
I am glad that now all three of us have tried it, and the two people who were like least about it have found that it is more enjoyable. Sean is joining us again as well. How is World of Warcraft doing for you? Are you playing Remix, or what's happening for you?
I actually fell out of love with Remix pretty hard. There's a lot of changes in the way gearing works from MOP Remix to Legion Remix. I will never poo-poo Blizzard for trying something new, and they tried something new. So thank you for trying something new. I much prefer the gearing in MOP Remix to Legion Remix, but I am almost done, so it doesn't really matter. I almost have everything bought that I want. I'll probably go through and do the class hall mounts for ones that I'm missing, just because it's so much faster to do them in Remix than it is to do them on live. But other than that, the games have treated me fine.
Okay. How did they change the gearing in Remix? Like, what's worse about it in your mind?
So in MOP Remix, you would get a piece of equipment, and you would spend bronze to upgrade that equipment. I think it was 16 tracks it had to upgrade to max, I want to say. Mm-hmm. And so you could just upgrade whatever pieces you wanted in whatever order you wanted using bronze. The big complaint that came from that, from a lot of people, was that it felt bad to them that the currency used to upgrade the gear was the same currency that you used to purchase the things. So that was the big feedback that people gave for MOP. Now, if you had just taken the time to max out your gear with bronze, it became infinitely faster to farm more bronze. Like if no upgraded gear meant you could farm all of the bronze in a week, I'm making these numbers up.
Yeah.
Upgrading your gear to max and then going to farm the bronze, you would have it done in a day and a half. Like that was that much faster. But people saw that it was the same currency, and so they immediately thought, I can't take from this to upgrade my gear because I want that bronze to buy things. So they didn't invest in themselves to get stronger to then farm the bronze faster and better. So
Sounds like people don't like meaningful choice.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a meaningful choice. There was no choice at all. Upgrade your gear, farm the bronze faster, save the bronze, save the world. But in Legion Remix, they changed it. So they said, "Hey, we hear you. We know you don't like that. So we're going to change the way this works. You now do not upgrade your gear. You get a random drop off of bosses or out of the treasure chests from things that you kill, and that random drop will go up in item level slowly based on your in-bag item level for each item that drops. But you can't target specific pieces. So your item level, your in-bag item level, is going to be limited by whatever your lowest item level piece is. And in a lot of cases, you could go multiple days without getting an upgrade to that lowest item level piece. So the gearing is significantly slower. There's no cost associated with it. The bronze is just for purchasing cosmetics and mounts and toys. So you're purely at the whim of RNG, and it takes a lot longer to max out. And the downside is, especially now into phase 3, is that if you're somebody who's not already 740 item level, you're going to have a significantly harder time getting into the other raids like Antorus and Tomb of Sargeras, because people are at the point where those are harder than the phase 1 raids. So people are just inviting people that are 740. You know, you open up the queue and it's 60% people that are 740. Well, if I have the option to take somebody who's already max level gear and then therefore gaining versatility on top of that, which is the real power, I'm going to take that person as opposed to this person who's 537 or even 739. Because if you're 739, your versatility is still lower than somebody who's 740. So it's not great. It's not great, and it's the RNG is not good. I think if they were to do another remix, they should meet it in the middle and have the gear be upgradable again, but maybe drop a separate currency for upgrading, or just go right back to MOP. I loved the bronze way, but I know a lot of people didn't, so I'm trying to I don't normally try to find out what people want to do or try to think like other people. I really like just thinking and speaking for myself. But I think a third or a second currency where you can upgrade specific pieces would feel a bit better. And then on top of that, in MOP Remix, there's two major things. In MOP Remix, your artifact power, so your cloak power, carried over to alts. So whatever power level you were at on your main, your alts were at that same power level. That's completely gone in Legion Remix. So if you make an alt, you reset back to 0 power on your artifact, but you keep your infinite knowledge, which is the modifier that determines how quickly you gain knowledge. So you will gain power faster than you did on your main, but you go back to 0. And your gear goes back to what it was. So your gear is going up slower, and you're already resetting your... I don't know anybody who's playing alts and enjoying it, or even playing alts, because it's a very alt unfriendly experience. Whereas MOP Remix was super friendly for alts because you started out with all of that power carrying over. So a couple of misses in my opinion, but yeah.
Okay. I know I have some friends who have multiple alts already through it. I am not one of them. My character, I've played all of 2 days through the 2 sessions through the entirety of Legion Remix, or Lemix as we're calling it. But now we're at Argus, so this is one of the final chapters. This is all the content is now released. So as of November 18th in NA, November 19th in EU, we are now at Argus Eternal. So that includes all of the stuff with Argus that was opened up at the end of Tomb of Sargeras, the Seat of the Triumvirate, and the Antorus, the Burning Throne raid. I saw a couple of people who were trying to solo it to get their friendship burbs, and it is possible. And so people are happy about that, and I'm glad that people are doing that. The next update, of course, is again in 2 weeks, so December 9th, the catch-up opportunities will open up. Maybe that's when I'll be able to get actually to level cap. There will be remix content updates and more rewards as well. So maybe that will be when more people tune in, when it is a little bit faster. Maybe they unlock things that make those alts better. But at this point, if you're enjoying Remix, you've got more content, and I hope that's good for everybody. With that said, let's get into stuff that I guess more of us are playing, which includes stuff on the beta, because today was the first day of raid testing. There has been a new build that came up, and that included a number of great things, including a level 90 realm that is specifically to test the endgame. That is Zalataf's endgame. You will have the profession vendors and trainers, the class set vendors, so you can check out your class sets, PvP gear vendors, trinket vendors, and all of that. But the environment is locked for the max level template only. You're not able to copy over your character and boost that to 90. You're not able to go and access the Midnight Outdoor content because it is specifically for instance content. With that said, we got to play through some of these raids, some Mythic Plus, and we'll be talking about that. But we got a number of changes. Something that we talked about last week that we're seeing in this week's build is that melee the melee auto attack damage being pumped up on particular classes. So you're seeing Death Knights of all varieties getting their melee increased, shamans and so forth. Well, enhancement shaman particularly, and so forth. These are huge jumps in damage. You're seeing, in some cases, quadruple auto attack damage or triple auto attack damage for tanks. I've seen 150 on some. So you're seeing a lot of that white damage being improved. I guess it helps for uptime. And with less abilities, I guess it. What do you think about this? Because I'm sort of scratching my head on it. I don't think that white damage should actually be an important part of the damage, other than to like get procs that you need and generate resources. But John, what do you think?
Well, you removed a lot of abilities that dealt damage and a lot of modifiers to simplify it so it's not so complex. And maybe you want to bring that damage back to a certain level. So the best way to do that is to increase white damage. I'm not sure what the reasoning is. I think that in the post they were like, we feel like melee attacks, melee specs should have a significant portion of melee damage or white damage be part of their damage breakdown. But we're not doing this for casters, right? It's not like casters are suddenly wanding again. So I don't know. I don't know. I think it's just a change. I don't know that I have a feeling on it. Lex, you actually play melee DPS. So how do you feel about the fact that you can do less and get more now?
Well, so I'm just okay. So first of all, I'm gonna have to be a little bit of an idiot for a second. So you don't do like if I'm meleeing and I'm casting my abilities, I'm not doing auto attacks on top of that, correct? Or is there like damage that's ticking in the background?
In some abilities, yes, but like there are some abilities that will stop your auto attack damage. So anything that has a cast, you won't do. So when you're doing an eye beam as a demon hunter, you're not doing auto attacks during that time. But if you're doing if you're doing many of your other abilities, you're also getting your auto attacks in on top of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just perplexed. Personally, I've never been like, you know what I really want in my video game is I want not doing anything to be really beneficial. I mean, not really beneficial, obviously. It's not like, I'm sure it's not actually like a significant amount of my parses. I guess I feel like I don't necessarily have a strong opinion on it because again, it's not me. It's just the fact that I clicked on the boss. I guess I'm also just kind of having trouble wrapping my head around it because it just feels like such okay, I'll have bigger numbers because I clicked on the boss.
It kind of harkens back to classic, right? I feel like, man, a dozen episodes or so ago, I made an offhanded, snarky comment that it feels like they brought somebody back who was around with the game in Classic, and they're trying to push everything back to the way that it was in Classic to make it better. But this feels like how it wasn't. Like white damage was a more significant portion of your auto attack. Like your auto attacks were more significant part of your damage in Classic. To the point that you would like macro attack start into some of your abilities in order to make sure you're getting those. So I don't know. I mean, maybe stop letting the person who was there when the game was made in 2004 make these decisions for us because it's 2025. I get it. He's a great storyteller, but obviously these are jokes. I don't think that the individual.
Listen, I was hard pressed to remember the last time you made a snarky comment. So like, this is refreshing and new for me.
Yeah, refreshing and new. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a feeling on it. It's just something that everybody's going to get. It's not like, oh, this is going to make players who aren't very good do better because they're getting more white damage, because everybody's going to get that bonus. So I don't know. I guess
the only thing I can think of is like if they just want bosses to fall over a little faster, right? Because
I think you hit on something that could be where it changes the floor a little bit, because if a greater portion of your damage is just I'm sticking with the boss and not I'm pressing the right buttons in the right order exactly, then the floor of damage for all these melee classes is raised a bit, right? You're not going to be doing it just definitely stresses uptime a little bit more, but because these things always generated your resources for most melee classes, like warriors don't get rage off of taking damage as much as they used to. It's all about them actually dealing damage, maelstrom weapon stacks, and so forth. Uptime always felt like important. Like, I don't know why. But just, sticking by the boss is going to give you a certain level of damage, and that's been raised. So I guess there's that. And I'm a little lost on this. I wish they kind of explained a bit more why they felt that white damage or auto attack damage was so important. But there are some other changes in there. There are dev notes on various classes, so people can check that. But along with all of this, they decided to add in or enable the damage meters. They enabled a couple of things that they were talking about before, especially Ian in his blog post and an interview that he had with PC Gamer. And so we've actually been able to test a little bit of these. Before we go into like the raid testing itself, I did want to take a little bit of time to talk about these things that have been added. Specifically for me, I'm looking at the damage meters and what it is right now. And in general, it's a basic damage meter. It is not able to drill down to the level of detail that other damage meters were able to do. But I also found that when I needed that, I was more likely to be looking at logs than looking at the damage meter. I just think that some of it's really unintuitive. Like, how many times when I was talking with somebody, they didn't know that they could get a damage breakdown by right-clicking. And the time that I discovered it myself was just accidentally. I was just sort of like, okay, let me scroll down, and I actually hit the wrong button. I was like, oh, that's where that is. It's also incredibly annoying that when you leave the instance, it auto-clears. I don't want that. It really should be clear when I ask for it. Go ahead, Sean.
There's a drop-down menu that has past encounters. It's the circle next to the cogwheel. I think, I can't confirm this, but I'm pretty sure if you click that, you can go back to previous ones. Because I know a lot of people were saying that it was auto-clearing, but I'm pretty sure that little cogwheel, it looks like a circle. It's just a circle right next to the gear. That will give you your previous ones. So that's another, but again, unintuitive, that it automatically does that. Yeah.
Yep. I think Blizzard needs to put out a tutorial video on their official site, or, work with a content creator. They've done several times where they've worked with different content creators, do a tutorial video, blast it out there so people know how this thing works.
Yeah. There's still notably some issues with it. There's no death recap, so there's no way to know from details what killed you. So you can't find out until you check the logs, and then you can click recap on the center of your screen it gives you, but it won't, there's no details death. So you have to check the logs for that, which is awful, which you can't see until the combat has ended, which is awful. And it's the part that's unfortunate is that it has bugs in it that were fixed in WoD. So monk stagger damage counts as damage done for monks, for brewmaster monks.
Yep.
So their stagger is showing as damage that they've done, inflating their damage on the meters. Augmentation evokers have no hooks at all. So any damage, so it's just like when AUG launched day one, how on details they were below the healers and below the tanks. That's how they look in the Blizzard in-game meters, because they're not accounting for any damage that AUG is boosting of their allies, the way that details had rectified to fix, to give an approximation. So those issues, and there's some other issues with like things that are like long channeled heals and stuff, things that aren't damage showing up as damage. That's the stuff that concerns me a little bit more, is that like we're excited for this because it's server side validation, but it doesn't seem like it was properly built, or that they missed.
I don't want to say it's properly built because it's still very much a work in progress.
Still in beta. That's fair.
But like, I will say that the oversights, considering how glaring they are and how notable they are, it feels poor that they weren't at least documented and saying this is something we're aware of and we're looking to put that in a future version. Like, I think a lot of these add-ons, a lot of the, well, I don't want to call them add-ons because they're integrated. A lot of the integrated options, I think that the team would be best served if they said, here's what you're going to see in this one, here's what we're working on in the next edition, and here's stuff that's future that's like future promises that you'll see down the line, right? Especially if they said, here's the stuff that we are going to guarantee that we're going to get in by launch. That would stop a lot of complaints, and it would also alert people if they saw something that wasn't on that list to give that feedback. It's just, I think it's a little bit more of proactive communication needs to be done with these setups. In a similar way, the raid frames that were put out, as a DPS, I don't particularly need those raid frames to be like as functional as healers or tanks, but I think this one was a weak point for me. This was in terms of sizing, like I get that you can size the panels, but I need those icons to be sized. I need to not have like the raid buff that I put out, so I'm putting out Sky Fury. I don't need that to take up everybody's bar, right? That's stupid. If I am a tank or not a tank, I don't want it to be, I either see it and it's taking up the whole bar, and even then, like it sometimes it might be a bit of a stretch to see it, or I don't see it at all. There might be a point where I can throw an off heal, or I'm in a Mythic Plus, and I can like help the healer with a Cleanse Spirit. And right now, it feels very. It doesn't feel like it can be customized enough. I would like them to add that same slider that says take this bar and go from like 100% to 150% or 70%, and put that on the icons too. I just want major buff icons, outside buff icons, buffs and so forth, to have that sort of filter on top. That sort of change in size on top of the filters that they say are going to be coming soon. And from the little bit of rating that I did, healers really want those filters, Blizzard. Get to that fast.
Yeah. Lex looked like she wanted to say something about damage meters, and I'm really excited to hear it because I haven't had Snarky Lex for a week.
Oh, to be completely honest, damage meters are one of the ones that I'm watching the least closely, because like what I have done is I've plugged in like on my actual game, I have details, and I sometimes look at kicks when I need to yell at my raid team and be like, hey guys, I can see that you're not kicking. So this has always, like, for me, this is fine if it's clunky. Personally, I understand that it is not for other people, and I'm not, not everything. My opinion is not the most important in the world. But overwhelmingly, if I'm doing a granular deep dive, I'm going to go into logs anyway. So the damage meters are not really something that I'm overly concerned about, personally. And admittedly, now that I'm not a healer, raid frames aren't really either, right? Like, that's also something that I want it good, because I really do feel like the healers are the ones who've kind of gotten like core gameplay taken, or not gameplay, but like ways that multiple people were playing, like click casting, things like that, have just been taken away from them. With like, you simply cannot play the way that you were playing before, which isn't really true for any other group of people. So at the very least, the ways that we can kind of ameliorate that. And to be fair, also, I'm a mouse over macro girly, so even if I was healing, I was not using click casting, I wasn't using voodoo or anything fancy. So like, again, it really doesn't affect me. But I do just feel like the healers have kind of gotten shafted the most. And if nothing else, I want them to have nice raid frames.
I definitely want the nicer raid frames that present that information, but I do want to push back against the voodoo. Not necessarily for my own sake, but because I think this is something that, like, it is one of those functionality things that Blizzard is just not going to do. And so I think that they need to, of course, design the mechanics accordingly so that you don't need to be that fast to remove a debuff, poison, or whatever it is. That they are highlighted well enough so that you know that it's on there through either the raid frames or through like in-game notification. I do feel that the nameplates themselves, one big thing that Sean and I were saying a little bit before we got started, threat. The default threat indication is incredibly lacking, and I think might need to be just generally reworked in a tank mode. Maybe that like that version might be okay for somebody who is in a role where like, hey, it's big and red and such, and so like, oh my goodness, I've got threat. Only on the ones that are at me, sure, but like, I have seen some nightmare scenarios. I have also had just tanks that I have run with I did a little bit of testing earlier that were not easily able to know something was in combat with them, because in many of the add-ons, they will prevent the bars from leaving your screen. It will you can actually like set it to so it doesn't go so far out of your screen, but Blizzard hasn't put that consideration in, and so if something is way out of your screen and in combat with you, like let's say a caster that's picking off your healer from the fringes of the arena, you do not know, and that seems incredibly painful. In fact, a friend of the show, Chrisette, had spoken about how she felt somewhat blind because of the UI changes, that she just did not feel like she knew what was going on. And then from like reviewing videos from my own experience, it's because there is a gap in information that is still not being properly communicated with the base Blizzard features right now.
One thing that because I feel like I've been really mean about Final Fantasy recently, one thing that I think Blizzard could pull from Final Fantasy that could be really beneficial is in Final Fantasy, there is on the side of your screen, everything that you're in combat with is listed and it has a little threat icon. So there's 3 different colors. There's like, full threat is red. It's like a red shape. So it's also, you don't have to worry about color blindness because it's different shapes. And then there's a yellow circle, I think, and then a green square. And that's really helpful because you can immediately see, I don't know if you can, I'm trying to remember if you can like click on it to target. I don't think you can, but that would be great, right? If there is like, oh Jesus, this one is, red and I'm tank, or like green or whatever. I can't remember anything. But like, I need to target that one specifically. But if nothing else, it means that you can just at a glance say, do I have all threat and am I at risk of losing threat? Without needing to look around and figure out what's going on and even know exactly where things are. You just know I'm good to go or I'm not good to go and I got to go figure out who's getting wailed on right now.
I like that. It's there's a lot of places they could go to get information to learn. I think so I have a quote from a very skilled healer who was in the raid testing with us, and I asked them how they felt about the raid frames, because I, from a tank perspective, was not overly happy with them. The only way to see the stacks... So I have a positive and a negative. So the negative is the only way to see the stacks that your co-tank has is by looking at the raid frames. Now, you can set them as main tanks, so then they pop out of the raid frames, but they're still locked to the top left corner of the raid frames. So wherever you can't set it to grow from the right. So your tanks are always going to be on the left-hand side, which means they're on as far away from your eye line as possible as a tank. You can't change that. That's really unfortunate.
You could move the entire group over to the right side.
Yeah, I would have to move the entire
group over to the right side, and then it would grow out to you. I guess.
And then it would grow, into the wall. So that's not ideal. It's not. I frankly don't like it. I like having a separate box that I can put somewhere into the center of my screen that tells me what my co-tank's health is and what they have for debuffs. Someone suggested using a focus using my focus target for that, but I use my focus target for kicks. So I don't know. We'll adjust. Anyway, I wasn't happy with the raid frames, so I reached out to one of the healers in our raid group with us that was testing, because they were all pretty vocal about the raid frames. I said, can I get a quote for the show tonight on the state of the raid frames? And the quote that she gave me was, "It's rough, man."
That's rough, buddy. That's rough.
Yeah. And then, so that was first boss. 2 bosses in, she came back and said, hope is renewed. I've adjusted. I think I adjusted because that boss felt infinitely better. And the takeaway here is, I forgot to say the good thing. So the bad thing was that I have to look at the raid frames for my tank thing. The good thing is all of the bosses except for Nexus King, Fallen King Saladar. So the 3 bosses we tested up to that point, it didn't matter what he had for stacks, my co-tank, because I could tell, I knew when to taunt based on what mechanic the boss had just done. So I didn't have to look and see what stacks he had because it's all taunt on 1. Very exciting gameplay, taunt on 1. But I don't have to rely on the raid frames for it, so that's good. So that was the good thing. That was the positive. They did make it very clear. Nexus King, complete opposite. Nexus King, you have to taunt on, you have to watch and see how many stacks they have, and it builds up very fast. It's very fast. I spent most of that fight looking at raid frames as a tank. Not ideal. But what I'm trying to say about the raid frames is a lot of healers and tanks and a lot of players, and I think this is something that we may have mentioned on the show, you're essentially going to have to relearn how to play this game, because you have however many years you've been playing using a custom UI that you set up yourself that is visually designed for you and your brain to process the information in the best way possible for you. And now Blizzard is saying, here's one of 3 different raid frame options you have. Figure out which one is closest to being best for you, and that's what you'll use. Now, we may get add-ons that adjust raid frames down the road, but we don't have those today. And the goal isn't for players to have to install an add-on to be able to play the game. So we need more in-game options to edit things and make them better. Let us move what buffs are where. Let us decide what buffs we want to track. I don't know. Another quote they gave me was, they need to talk to a healer. Any healer, just somebody who's healed this game in the last 5 years, please talk to one of them, was the other quote I got from somebody else, which is a bit extreme, but if you look at Twitter, it's not any brighter for healers.
I'm sorry. I will assume that person hasn't gone through and interviewed every employee to determine that they're not healers, and that they have not healed in 5 years.
No. They didn't even say they had to have healed. They just said talk to a healer.
Talk to a healer. Okay. But I'm going to do one better and assume that there are people who heal within the Blizzard staff that talk to devs.
Yeah, of course there is. Yeah.
Regardless.
People were frustrated today, I think, is the takeaway.
But
this
I
is
think
great
that
news.
you've actually hit on something that I do want to cover. But you know what, Lex, let me give you the floor for this.
I was gonna be a little bit of a jerk. I was gonna say this is great news for little scrubs like me with our Frankenstein UI. We don't have to relearn anything. I've gotten no changes. Mine already looks like the base UI. This is gonna be sick. I'm gonna be top of the DPS charts while you all figure out how to replay your game. I'm sorry,
If your white damage is increased, you will be.
Oh hell yeah!
But actually, my comment lines with Lex's. I think that what you're going to find is that there is going to be an adjustment period. It's going to be very rough. In fact, that might be the name of this show. Whenever you get onto the beta, or whenever the pre-patch comes and changes everything, and you lose your UI stuff, and you have to reset up with the base UI, it's going to be not only the adjustment of that and the loss of information that you're so used to knowing exactly where to look because you've lined it up with your natural instincts, but on top of that, it's going to be relearning your class because a lot of these classes have been significantly pruned. It's going to be new encounters and so forth. So while I expected today to be the most culture shock that we're going to see, I expect a lot of people just logged in for raid testing and being like, okay, cool, with maybe some testing on the dummies ahead of this. I don't think that it is that you should take what we're saying today and expect that it is all doom and gloom. I think that one, the UI is going to improve. How much remains to be seen, but also players are going to adjust. We are a resilient bunch for the most of us, and others of us are just going to immediately roll with the punches. Some of us are doing this full time, and by the time the rest of us get to level 90, they will have cleared through the week's worth of dungeons and already know all the skips and such, and have already hit their stride. So,
No, he's talking about me, Sean.
yeah,
He's
no,
talking
so
about one of us.
yeah, like it is reflected in this show as well. It is going to be the growing pains of how much you customize your UI, Sean, and how quickly you put in the repetition to like adjust to the changes. It is going to be how much I've customized my UI and how long it takes me to make those adjustments. It is going to be the exact same thing for Lex, and the truth of the matter is that the UI has become such a personal thing that I cannot tell anybody how good or bad it is for them, only that it will not be the tailored glove that you're used to.
I think a lot about the first time that I ever played with my gaming mouse. And within like 5 minutes of playing with it, I was like, I have wasted money. This is dumb. This is terrible. I was like literally like, because I have a 12 key, my entire gaming is my thumb. And I remember sitting there, like literally craning my neck to look at what numbers were where to figure it out. And I was like, this is impossible. I don't understand how. I don't understand why I bought this stupid little piece of junk. I don't understand how anyone ever plays with this. And right now, if you took away my gaming mouse and told me to do it all with keybinds with my keyboard only, I would not be able to play anymore. I do worry about accessibility. That, and again, is not something that I can speak to directly, but I have concerns. I worry. I think healers are getting the biggest, or have the biggest risk of shifts. Right? I don't think anyone else has had their core way they have played this game taken away. Right? There's little things that, the way that you're used to your UI being set up is going to be jarring. I think that healers are the only people who are going to be like, oh wait, like this is a whole new game from what I've been doing. And I also understand that I am at a pretty casual level, so the harm to me is always going to feel different. But I do overall think you're probably right, Manny. I think that humans have very elastic brains, and we're good at, especially as gamers, we're really good at kind of plugging ourselves in and having a rough time and figuring it out. I will say, and you guys can tell me if you disagree with this take, this is to FazDev directly, this is a tier to tune down. Right? Make it easy. Make it a bunch of sludge fists. Make it like very straightforward. Like everything is like just kind of teaching you. Make it so that everyone's getting to AOTC. You're expecting people to get to AOTC early. Like obviously don't make it like babies first, but like tune down, right? Because yeah, we are relearning how to play and we are going to be struggling. And if we're doing that with like highly complicated bosses and highly complicated raids and dungeons, that puts a much higher risk of people hitting frustration walls.
I have good news for you, Lex, when we talk about raid testing. I have good news for you.
I think that's a good segue as we're ever going to get. So, Sean, take it away.
We did raid testing today. This was day one of beta raid testing. We tested the only boss in the Dream Rift Awakens raid or whatever it's called. Probably the worst boss model I've ever seen. I did not like the way that it looked. Then we tested. It's like a weird chimera, so it's like a moose's antler and then a wolf's face,
like,
and
its skin or its arm is like the femur bone is like actually separate. I like the details. I was actually staring at the details, being like, "Wow, there's a lot of work put into that."
No, details is gone, man. They turned that off.
Right.
And then we did the first three bosses of the Void Spire, which was the first boss who everybody from this point forward will just call Tic Tac Toe. The second boss, who is a weird four-armed Teros. And then the third boss was Fallen King Saladar. And Lex, I think you're going to get your wish. We were able to kill 3 of the 4 of them. This was heroic bosses, and we were wearing gear that was the same item level from heroic dungeons. So not Mythic 0, not LFR, heroic level dungeons. We were killing heroic raid bosses. Obviously, tuning will change that. Let's do the good, the bad, and then one thing I would like to see different. So the good, all 4 of the bosses were easy. They
Sorry,
like I
easy
mentioned,
as
the tank-
in easy to kill or easy to understand?
both,
Both.
with the exception of the 4-armed Taros one.
Okay.
They were all. It was very easy to see a mechanic, see what happened when that mechanic played out, and through that and reading the dungeon journal, understand what to do. Especially so for the first boss, the Chimera boss from the Dream Rift, the first boss in the Void Spire, and Nexus King Saladar. So all of those where it was easy to understand what to do. You could blind prog these, Lex. Timbermont Tavern could blind prog these very successfully, I think. The 4-armed boss, not easy to figure out. I still now, after talking to multiple raiders in top 50 world ranked guilds, do not understand how we were supposed to do that tank mechanic. And at one of those guilds wasn't even, they just decided to rotate immunities. They're like, we're just going to have DPS immune soak this and not make it a tank mechanic. So I don't know what the solution is there. That boss was the only one that frustrated me because it was not clear what to do with that mechanic. It's a debuff that goes on you when he does this ability that he does multiple times before the debuff expires. So it's like, I don't know what we're supposed to do here. It wasn't clear with the dungeon journal. Testing different things didn't seem to work. That was very frustrating.
Sorry, I do want to ask.
Yeah.
Multiple buffs going on you, not sure what to do, but like it wasn't that you weren't sure what to do and you needed you feel like it needed a weak or like when we were testing the last raid, there were specific bosses where we were like, that's a weak aura boss. Did any of these seem like that that would be like solved with a weak aura?
No. This is just poorly designed or poorly explained or poorly telegraphed. Like he does two smashes with his big hands. Yep. Each smash puts a 2-minute long debuff on you that increases your physical damage taken by 150%. And then after he does 2 big smashes with the debuff, he does 4 smashes with his small hands, which are still significant damage, but don't apply the debuff. But the debuff lasts for 2 minutes. If you are the tank who takes the first big hand smash, your debuff has not fallen off by the time the next first big hand smash comes around. So you can't just trade off big hand smashes. So what some groups were doing on the testing was having one tank soak both of the first 2 big hand smashes, and then the off tank soak all of the small hand smashes. And then when it cycled back around again, they switched. But the damage from the small hand smashes, multiple in a row, back to back, was still a lot more than like you run our defensives as the tank taking the small hand smashes. Unless you're a Brewmaster Monk, who are completely broken right now, and we're able to take both of the big hand smashes and all 4 of the small hand smashes and one more big hand smash.
And not only because the stagger keeps you going, but sometimes you dodge it and therefore don't get the debuff. That was absurd.
Exactly. So it's just the dungeon journal doesn't explain it well. You can normally tell by how long a debuff is and how long until the next time that mechanic comes around what you're supposed to do. It was just we weren't able to figure it out. Nobody was. And like I said, one guild just said, hey, you are a DPS. And somebody has to be in the soak or it kills everybody. So they were just saying, DPS, you turtle, you bubble, you go in that, you're this one. And the tanks weren't even dealing with it.
You couldn't group soak it, could you? Like it didn't divide?
It was not a group soak. No,
Okay.
It was just a solo soak. Yeah. So that was the only frustrating part. But the boss is easy to understand outside of that. And yeah, they were easy to fight. Like we killed them. And our gear was, like I said, tuned very low for what it should be for heroic rating. So that was fine. And the bad, the visuals on some of the bosses could use some work. So the Chimera boss does a strafing run across the platform during his intermission. And it's just a gray bar. It's like a gray, opaque, dusty bar that cuts across the platform. That is, if you're on the edge of it, you can see because the borders are slightly darker gray. But if you're in the middle of it, you can't tell which way to go because you don't even know you're in it sometimes because it's just gray. So that needs a better visual. And obviously raid frames and everything like that was an issue. There was nothing that felt like people kept making exclamation statements like, "Oh, I can't believe I don't need weak auras." Or, I can figure this out. The tic-tac-toe boss, you can't let him have his ads create a straight line. So you have to, using mechanics, break things to stop it from being a straight line. And people were like, "Oh, this is great. I don't need a weak aura for this." I'm like, well, of course you don't. It's 9 boxes. We only have the option for 9. Even if weak auras existed, you wouldn't need a weak aura for this. Because you can design bosses.
The question is, are they designing where weak auras would not be needed? And yes, with only 3x3 grid, you're not really going to need a weak aura for it. No. Could they have designed something where you would have needed a weak aura? Yes, of course. Right?
Yeah.
Would this have been trivialized with a weak aura? I don't think so. This just seems like so basic that it would be almost harder to look at a weak aura where you've got a grid.
But it was a fine bot. The thing I think I would do differently. Like, I'm really struggling, and it might be a case of the fact that the UI is different, or it might be the environments, but I'm really struggling to visually parse any of the information to the point that I actually started to worry that I might have like a visual learning problem. But I was really struggling to the Blizzard timer bar basically didn't exist. Like, it was like I couldn't even see it. It basically didn't exist to me. It's right next to my screen. But because I was so focused on everything else, it didn't seem to exist to me. And I was just, I don't know if it was maybe the zones weren't overly interesting. It was a lot of purple on purple, a lot of Koresh themed stuff in the Void Spire. And none of these bosses, none of them stood out to me. Whereas in testing last year, even in that first day, there was Forge Weaver. We did Forge Weaver on that first day. And afterwards, I was like, this is going to be one of the best bosses ever. But from testing today, none of these bosses to me are memorable in any way. So
even though you said it was the boss that was hardest to understand, I really feel that the giant forearm boss was pretty visually stunning, especially that laser breath that he puts across the arena. That to me was fairly epic. I mean, it is again one of those immobile bosses that stands at the edge of the cliff and is oh, I'm going to attack you. And so the animations that they do are kind of cool. The radiating circles, the crystalline walls and everything. I felt that that was a pretty visually impactful boss.
I don't see any of that. Are you ranged or melee?
I'm melee.
I don't even see any of that. I'm looking at his chest essentially, and I play at max camera zoom. All I can see is the first 2 feet of that wall. I don't even know what the ads looked like. I didn't see a single ad. So maybe it is me. Maybe there is something wrong with my eyes. I'm going to go back and watch my VOD, but I don't, even that beam, I remember a very, a blue glow from his mouth, but I couldn't tell you that there was an epic beam shooting across the platform.
And he covers most of the platform because you have to go to the left or the right to avoid it. Okay. Yeah, maybe it is your perspective, but that doesn't negate your point because you were fighting these other bosses and still with the same perspective, you found them just more visually engaging. Yeah, I think this in general from the fights that I got to see, and I did have to step away in the middle of it, so I did not get to test as much as you, Sean. I think that there is there's some more that they could do, especially that wind tunnel where the boss is in the intermission. It needs something to be better defined. When I was doing Mythic Plus, I also found that some of the visuals do still need that touch that they started adding in Dragonflight that we were lauding. It's funny because we have one of the oldest dungeons to ever grace Mythic Plus returning with the Pit of Saran, and I thought that this would be an absolute nightmare for visuals, but they did a decent job. Some of the models are dated because they're Wrath of the Lich King models, but most of the models actually got replaced with Shadowlands counterparts. And I didn't even notice at first. I was like, "Oh wait, that's from Shadowlands. That's why that looks so good." Which is really good.
It's just the jailer. They're all just the jailer.
Oh God,
They are a lot of models from Maldraxxus. There are a lot of models from Maldraxxus. And then of course they just use like updated Death Knight armor for others of them. But the visuals are pretty good, other than because it's shadow on that dark blue sort of things. Sometimes, like again, I was talking about the caster picking off from the side. Sometimes the caster will be picking you off from the side, and you won't see the actual bolt that they're using at you, because unlike Maldraxxus, where they're like bright green and stuff, so you could see them, these are shadow magic over dark grays, and you'll just see your health being chunked. So there's a lot of things that I think that they need to do. Visual clarification that they should make another pass with on that, especially when we're no longer supposed to be relying on the UI primarily to solve these things for us. But yeah, I guess that's a segue for Mythic Plus here, unless you have something further to talk about Raid.
No.
Yeah, so I did some testing of Mythic Plus. In general, the biggest thing that I want to talk about is the Xal'atath affixes. Because we are now we're past the War Within, we are now looking at Midnight, and it's the same suite of affixes. I don't have any other way to describe this other than lazy. Like, no. You could have Xal'atath back and she's got a new bag of tricks, and I would have been cool with that. I would have preferred that they had done something else, but whatever. But the exact same affixes with just a little bit of tuning seems just lazy. I don't know. Sean, you mostly played at the first week to get to your 10s and then push to 12s. So you probably had the least amount of time with the affixes. But I feel like even you would have gotten bored of them over the course of 3 tiers.
Yeah, I hate all affix. I'm very anti-affix, so I don't know that I would have gotten bored with them. I'm a very strange creature. I liked when the dungeons never changed. I lament the days of being able to farm the blood scale 3 tiers in a row, because I like that familiar. It's comfortable, right? It's like a hoodie or my slippers that I've had for 4 years. Like, I know how they feel. I know what to expect. I know how to pull them. I know what the creatures do. I know what the mobs do. And I know what loot I'm farming. So I liked that familiarity, that sameness.
I'm sorry, but if you're looking for loot in your slippers, 4 years is too long to have those.
No, man, my slippers are great. I have glare-ups. They're fantastic. They're a marine wool with a leather sole. Anyway, no, so I mean, I might have gotten bored with them. I don't like affixes, though. So I would have liked to seen change just for the sake of change, but there's got to be people who live in those affix ranges who are tired of them, you know, even just for the fact that it's a different expansion. Like, although we carried affixes over, I guess, from Legion forward, so with very little change to them. So I don't know. I'm a bad person to ask. I'm anti-affix, but I'm also super comfy when things don't change. So.
Okay. Lex, from your point of view, I know that like season 1 you gave it a shot, season 2 you're staying away. I don't know your season 3 journey off the top of my head, but where do you sit with the Xal'atath affixes?
So I did extremely few Mythic Plus, so I don't, like, on the one hand, it's not repetitive to me. I do, and this is obviously at a very different level. I feel like this is kind of potentially the same issue we had with them just like randomly deciding that actually they were going to have one Delve companion for an entire expansion, which is, if you're like, oh, this is actually like the people like it right now, so I guess you don't have to change it. You do kind of forget that when people don't get change, it gets boring. And also, I'm not a Mythic Plus player, so like, who really cares what I think? I do think it's kind of sad. I do think like the special expansion affix is always like from my Mythic Plus time. I always think it's kind of cool that there's something that's expansion specific. So I think it's, I think it's sad. And frankly, to your lazy point, I haven't said this for a while. It makes me worry about how much they're taking on if they're deciding, like, this one thing that we've done a special affix every expansion. What if we just didn't do that? Like, do you think they'd care? A little concerning.
Maybe they won't notice. Maybe they won't notice.
It just feels Azeroth, right, guys? It's the World Soul Trilogy.
In fairness, they did change them. We now have 2 extra seconds to deal with Devour. We have 4 extra seconds to deal with Oblivion. So there was changes made. It's not like they just cut and pasted. I've been snarky twice.
That's true. And what I've always been saying is on new expansions, they should basically just like release basic patch notes. Like, why not just do another 0.7, right? It's changes. They made changes.
Manny doesn't get to say they're lazy, and I get to be snarky. That's how that works. Yeah, it's not a good look. Well, I don't know.
Yeah. I when I look at the Xal'atath affixes and I look at what's come before this, when we were in Dragonflight, it was the end of seasonal affixes. They got rid of those and they said, "Hey, we're just going to have the affixes that we will change each season." And then we had Xal'atath, and it was staying for the expansion, but I was like, that's fine. This is what ties it together. You don't have to relearn the affixes, but you do have to deal with new dungeons and the revamped versions of the dungeons when they come back. And then they did season 3, and people voted for the same stupid dungeons, and we had to deal with that. And maybe that helped to line up with like how I got bored of it, because it was again repeating those dungeons as well as the affixes, so it wasn't as much change up. I guess I don't want to put more work on them, so I'll leave it alone for this one, just so that I don't make Lex cry. But I think that in terms of the dungeons, if I had to make one wish, Blizzard, just one wish for Christmas, break Mythic from Mythic Plus. I don't want the Mythic dungeons rotating with the Mythic Plus season. Like, that's it. Like, I understand it was to line up and give a starting point, but now that the Xal'atath affix doesn't even come into play at a certain point, that time doesn't come in, that like losing lives doesn't come into a certain point, you've kind of already made that on-ramp going through, and the Mythic Zero can just stay as the like dungeons that are actually relevant to the expansion throughout, because there are many dungeons that came in at the beginning of the War Within that we just never saw again after season 1, and I feel that that's a little sad.
Oh,
They were good dungeons. Stone Vault, good dungeon, has a mount. If you didn't get it in season 1, you have to wait till midnight to try and get it.
Right. Yeah. That too.
Dark
For
Flame
my mount collecting. Sean standing up for us non-players. Thank you.
Listen, I got you. I'm going to be a mount collector. I'm close. We're almost there. We're like one more raid test day away from me becoming a full-time mount collector and housing main.
Because as we know, Manny, you can't raid and also do mount collecting, so he has to drop. If he's going to collect mounts, he has to drop out of raid.
I can only do one. I deserve that.
No. Sean's sticking up for the mount collector, so we'll leave him alone this time.
That's right. Trying to help with the little people.
Yeah.
That's a joke. For legal reasons, that's a joke.
We'll edit that out later. So, the other part that was a little bit of bad news for us is that while we wanted to play with the Blues, while I wanted to finally prove to Sean that Blizzard devs actually do play this game, it appears that Sean is right, and they canceled Play with the Blues this week. Sean?
I've never questioned that publicly. We were supposed to do the testing of the midnight pre-patch event, but server issues happened. It's beta. Beta's going to beta. So we didn't get a chance to the rescheduling it for another time. Manny, I wanted to ask you because I haven't done dungeons yet. I don't know how many you did. How did the interrupts feel? How many casters per pack? Have we gotten the vaunted limited number of casters per pack that Blizzard promised us? Or is it still, and when I say per pack, I mean, you're obviously pulling 2 or 3 packs at a time. So in that 2 or 3 pack pull, is it, how many kicks are we coordinating?
It is so hit and miss. It pack Pit of Saran, then maybe they need to change the way that it's pulling, so you're pulling on the casters, but there's not much line of sight to get to pull the casters into a certain point. It is, I think, the scenario that would make you hate it the most. But there are other dungeons where they are far better done. I think actually dungeons that they've made for Midnight are better. So Algathar Academy, they've completely, not Algathar Academy. What's the one from BC? I can't remember the name of it.
From BC?
From BC.
Burning Crusade?
Magister's Terrace. Okay, so that wasn't...
Oh, yeah.
Magister's Terrace.
Yeah,
that wasn't open for Mythic Plus testing, but it was open... but it was something that you were able to test through. And between the fact that it's a bunch of hallways, so it's pretty easy to line of sight, between the fact that the casters are maybe 1 or 2 in a pack, so the DPS can generally handle the interrupts. I was also with a paladin on that one. That shield does some good work.
I ran that on normal, and the cast it's all casters. Every pack is 3 and 4 casters.
No, in the library, but when you're in the courtyard, when you're in the pathway in between, remember you get from the library, go into the courtyard, go to the thing.
I can't skip the library when I run it on Mythic Plus. I'm still going to have to go through that.
I'm aware you can't, but you can. But generally, the library was where the casters were, and that was a significant jump in the casters that's different from the rest of the dungeon. So a bad pack.
Yeah, all right, I'm cherry picking.
Okay,
right.
yeah,
you called me out. You got me.
Right. Plus, that is something that was before they made changes. They decided to make these changes, right? So hopefully that's a point.
No, if there's interviews where they have said that Operation Floodgate and Ecodome Aldani are great examples of the level of casters they want to see in dungeons. And Ecodome Aldani is literally every single mob there cast.
Yeah. Floodgate seems fine in my
Floodgate's fine. I agree. Yeah. Floodgate's fine. There are a lot of packs with casters.
That seems such a wide variance.
It's really weird that it's so different from what they said.
Skyreach I found wasn't bad, but that's because the first half circle you're basically line of sight pulling into a big group and then they're together. When you get past the first boss, it's one big pull before getting into the second boss. The birds aren't casters. And then going to the last boss, it's 2 stops on the way, and that big Amatron isn't a caster period. So that one just seems kind of designed with this in mind already.
Yeah. My concern is that... No, I'm not going to say it. It's not.
There are definitely pain points. By my admission and by your memory, there are definitely pain points, and they need to address them. But that's what we were saying last episode, where it's it's now on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At this point in the War Within beta cycle, I was so excited. The raid looked like it was going to be good. At that point, it was the first raid, so it was Nurbar Palace, which was a great raid. The classes felt great. The world felt amazing. Everything was positive. I was very excited. And at the same time point now in this beta cycle, I'm considering just taking 3 weeks to play Breath of the Wild and wait and see what happens.
we gotta like record that that
I
as a
love
separate
Breath of
podcast.
I love Breath of the Wild. Yeah, that's a Patreon bonus episode where I tell everyone how it's the most perfect game. But yeah, I have a lot more concerns. I'm really genuinely nervous for the first time since I can remember. Yeah, and for the first time since I came back to the game in 8.2. Like Nyalotha was the first raid that I had done. After Ice Crown Citadel, I took a break until Nyalotha. And as soon as I did Nyalotha once on Heroic, I immediately went to find a Mythic Raiding Guild and never looked back. And this is the first time since then that I'm genuinely considering that maybe it's time to just take a step back from raiding entirely. And that, because if it's not like it, whether or not the UI can be customized or, you know, the challenge or any of that, if I'm not having fun, if it's just not fun. And like I said, none of those bosses today stood out to me as, hey, I can't wait to pull this on live. None of them did. And even the last PTR cycle, the going into midnight or going into the season 3, Forge Weaver Araz felt like an all-time great boss right on the first day of testing. Plexus Sentinel was fun as a first boss. And even now today, still I enjoy pulling after killing him, 16, 17, 18 times. And even like Lumathar and Soulbinder, well, they weren't like, hey, these are amazing bosses. They're not. There's stuff to do. They engaged me, and I did not feel that at all today. And maybe it's because I was trying to adjust to the UI, but I just felt like most of today was just me being sort of lost in the sauce of what was going on. I didn't know the boss mechanic names. I didn't really know what was going on. None of it mattered to me. I don't know. I'm really worried. And I don't want to be worried because I love this game. And I really want to go to BlizzCon and hug a dev and thank them. And please let that happen. Otherwise, I'm going to buy an Overwatch. And see this new Overwatch hero? She looks amazing. Vendetta. I'm in. Anyway.
I've definitely had worries. They haven't been so focused on such fundamentals before. And I think that's a scary thing. Like I remember about this time in the War Within, I was just like, I don't know what they're doing with Totemic. They're not thinking about this, and that landed very poorly at first. So I'm hoping that this is not the same thing, but we will see.
I actually think you being worried makes me more worried because you're like the rock. You're like the Blizzard Rock. You're like, no, listen, guys. Like you're like. You're the Blizzard Rock, but now you're like tonight. You're like, no, I'm kind of worried. Here's some things that I didn't like that I saw, and I'm a little worried about this. And I'm like, Manny's never worried. Manny's usually admonishing us for being so alarmist.
I admonish you for being alarmist before we get actual things there.
Yeah,
I admonish you for being like, oh, the devs are lying to us and they're blowing smoke out of our butts. And it's like, okay, well, I guess at that point, why are we even having this conversation?
Yeah.
Because it's fun, Fanny. It's fun. It's fun to be snarky, and it's fun to be like a little bit doomer sometimes. And this, maybe that's the thing you should have admitted. I shouldn't have admitted on air.
Yeah. But we do have more raid testing. There is still time to test more dungeons. This week for dungeons, the tests for Mythic Plus are for Pit of Saran, which I mentioned, Skyreach, which I mentioned, the Seat of the Triumphant, and Algathar Academy. That's why that was in my head. I didn't get to test that myself, but that's also available for testing. So those are the returning dungeons that they need to adjust. So I'm glad that they are putting those through. And then, of course, we've got more raid testing starting tomorrow. We will be having another couple of bosses tested, and we will, of course, report back to you about that next week. But for those who are wondering when we are going to get the midnight pre-launch event, they have rescheduled that for Friday. So make sure you are ready. That's going to be Friday, November 21st at 11 PST. That's 2 p.m. EST. Or if you are over in jolly old England, that's going to be 7 p.m. for you.
Those freaking jerks. They schedule it for the one phone call I have at work. FazDev, fix this. Not that I'd ever play World of Warcraft on work hours.
Yeah, Lex would just be watching videos while diligently working.
Exactly.
Anyways, again, they did have to cancel this before. Hopefully this will work this time. All testing is scheduled to change, as we now know for sure. But I'm looking forward to this. I'm hoping that it's going to be something more in the vein of the successes like the Legion pre-launch event, where we got a good amount of story, as well as some really cool little events that we got to run around and do, and less like the... Well, I guess the Shadowlands pre-launch event was actually pretty decent. Just running around one area, kill off all the rares to get some stuff. That was like a nice Easter egg hunt and not like too much of a headache. And also really good on the experience for alts, people who wanted to level up their alts. So I'll give that one a win. What's a bad one?
I feel like the War Within one was bad only because it became the like rinse and repeat. They did that exact same event like 10 times. Like the first time I thought, I was like, oh yeah, that's actually kind of cool. And then we were at like the anniversary event and they were pulling the same thing out. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm kind of over it.
Yeah. Like, and the Dragonflight one was basically the same thing, except like a palette swap so that we can have the, like, what were the bad shamans called? The Primalist. We could have the Primalist instead. Yeah, so they've kind of gone to that. Well, no more of that. Again, Blizzard.
I want to call the bad shamans Manny.
No, Manny's a good shaman.
Exactly.
Manny's a good shaman. They should call the good shamans Manny.
There you go.
Yeah, okay.
There you go. I mean, like, good in terms of like being a true hero, not good in terms of gameplay. At that point, I'm a bad shaman. I'm good with that.
Hey, you beat that augmentation evoker today.
I have a wish. It's not going to happen, but I have a dream. I actually don't even remember if this is a pre-patch or just like a fun little event. I want another like stupid, annoying, immersive thing, like when we were all turning into zombies. I want like a in world. Everyone hates it, except it's actually super fun and it's insane and nothing makes sense. I want them to break the game.
I would be.
They are.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a new zombie virus that just screws with your UI. But until next time, guys, may all your hits be crits.